Hi, my name's Mark Cook. I'd like to talk to you about some of the non-pharmacological methods used to treat epilepsy. Now, there are a lot of ways of treating epilepsy non-pharmacologically. A lot of them are pretty straightforward and involve taking a thorough history and finding out from the patient recognisable triggers, prodromes and situations that might trigger seizures. Some epilepsies are complex and reflex, and finding out what specific things trigger these seizures can be very useful. These are perhaps a bit more common than we recognise, and taking a very thorough history will establish this. If you can recognise these seizure-specific features, you can modify people's lifestyles. You might be able to provide acute medical therapies such as benzodiazepines and so on, but taking a clear history is the only way to do this. These are probably more significant factors than we recognise, and some studies have shown control of seizures in up to 20% of patients simply by controlling modifiable factors such as sleep patterns, alcohol intake and reflex epilepsy syndromes. So that's very important. Recently there's been a lot of interest in diets. Now, diets are a very old therapy for epilepsy, but recently they've come to the fore again. The ketogenic diet is of proven benefit in a lot of childhood epilepsies and some infantile epilepsies, and probably has broader application in a lot of adult focal epilepsies that are otherwise intractable. There's the standard ketogenic diet, the modified Atkins diet, and other variations on the ketogenic diet, all of which seem to show a similar improvement in seizure control. So these are well worth considering in people with intractable epilepsies. In recent times there have been a lot of interest in neuromodulation. Now, direct stimulation of the nervous system, either peripherally or centrally, might be able to improve seizure control, and we're familiar all with the vagal nerve stimulator, available now for over 20 years. There's a similar device, the trigeminal nerve stimulator, which has the advantage that it can be provided externally, and this is a device under development currently. It works on a similar principle of altering brain activity through modulating presumably deep structures. But this seems to show useful improvement in some people's seizures. There are various methods of deep brain stimulation. Recently the Sante trial was published. This is a method of bilateral thalamic stimulation, and this showed control of seizures in about 50% of patients with 50% reduction. But within that there were some very significant improvements in seizure control. These seem pretty safe procedures with the expected risks of implanting electrodes, and seem free of a lot of the other side effects we get from pharmacological therapies. There's another kind of deep brain stimulation with direct hippocampal stimulation. Again, a very experimental process, but lots of these new techniques show some promise in new ways of controlling seizures in the long term. NeuroPace have a system which provides direct cortical stimulation. This is a responsive stimulation system where EEGs are analysed and patterns recognised, so the device provides an electrical stimulation in response to detected seizure activity. This has recently also been published, the results of a randomised controlled trial showing about 50% improvement in 50% of patients. So again, it shows good promise and is again free of a lot of the side effects associated with conventional therapies. I think it's pretty early days yet still for a lot of these treatments. Even more recent, there are devices which might predict seizures. So a study has recently been undertaken where a device is implanted intracranially, which collects electrical activity, analyses the EEG, and predicts seizures minutes or hours in advance. It's probably too early to say how this might influence our management of epilepsy in the long term, but it does perhaps offer opportunities to fundamentally change our approach to the control of seizures if methods of accurately predicting seizures can be established. As well, there are even more unusual and experimental techniques involving freezing of the brain, the direct delivery of drugs via pumps or polymer-based devices to the brain, and so on. But I think there's a lot happening, and most of it centres around this interface of engineering and epilepsy at the moment. Thanks for your attention.